Hi guys, today I am going to be discussing about the brief introduction about the Apex programming. So already we have discussed about the administration part in Salesforce where we can able to implement a set of features with the help of by using the mouse pointer, nothing but the point and click where that will be purely comes under the configuration part. So we have two types of implementations in Salesforce. One is configurations, second one is customizations. Configurations can be done with the help of the programming, declarative customizations, where the customizations can be, these are also known as programmatic customizations. So when coming to the declarative customizations, everything we can able to perform with the help of a point and click, that is purely comes under the admin part, where we can able to implement a set of features by using the mouse pointers, where we can able to create some objects, we can able to create some validation tools, we can create some workflows, we can able to configure the users, and we can able to set the profiles and the report generation and everything, where we can able to implement a set of features in Salesforce by using the declarative customizations, which it doesn't require to write any code, which it doesn't require to have any technical knowledge of Apex and Visual Force. And in sometimes, whatever the features provided by the Salesforce in terms of the configurations, those features cannot be suitable for all organizations. So at the time, if we want to go beyond those features, then we have to go with the customizations. When coming to the customizations, we require to write some code by using the Apex programming and the Visual Force, where we can able to implement our own features, and we can design our own user interfaces, and we can write our own business logic also. So when coming to the programmatic customizations, we require to have the knowledge of Apex and Visual Force, where Apex is purely an object-oriented programming language and the Visual Force is purely a web development framework. So now when coming to the customizations part, we are going to be discussing about Apex programming, and the second one is we are discussing about the Visual Force programming. So now come to the Apex programming here. When coming to the Apex programming, Apex is purely an object-oriented programming language. I hope everybody is aware of what is object-oriented programming language. So in the previous session, we have discussed about the different approaches of programming languages. Like we have discussed about the structure-oriented programming language and object-oriented programming language, component-oriented programming language, and we have discussed about the message or service-oriented programming language also. But in our Salesforce, it has provided the platform called as force.com, which provides a programming called as Apex programming, which is purely comes under an object-oriented programming language. So by using this Apex programming language, we can able to implement our own custom business logic. We can implement our own custom business logic. We can implement the complex validation rules. We can perform database manipulations. and then we can perform DML manipulations, and then we can perform batch programming. We can implement batch programming, and we can implement scheduling programming. And by using this Apex, we can implement the custom integrations of Salesforce with external systems or applications. So all these features we can able to implement by using this Apex programming. When coming to the Apex programming, this is purely an object-oriented programming language where each and every feature in Apex programming language will be available in terms of a class and an object. Because object-oriented programming language provides a approach where we can able to restrict the access of the data from the outside of the classes. Where when you go with the structured oriented programming, the data will be moving around the application where whatever the functionality that we are implementing in structured oriented programming, everything we have to implement in terms of a function, like as a procedure. But when coming to the structured oriented programming, we have a drawback of security of the data. And we don't have any such options in structured oriented programming where we cannot restrict the access of one method from others. In structured oriented programming, one method can be called by any all the methods available in the entire application. We cannot able to restrict because we don't have such options in structured oriented programming. But when coming to the object oriented programming, we have certain features by which we can able to define the scope or level of access for each and every member inside the programming, where we can implement each and every functionality in terms of a class and an object. Need to implement each feature in terms of a class and an object. So it is providing so many fundamental features to you, like it provides, the object-oriented programming language provides the code security and we can define the scope or level of access of each member inside the program. So whatever the variables that you have defined, whatever the functions that you have defined, whatever the properties that you have defined, for each and every property, for each and every member, we can able to specify the level of access or the scope. Nothing but up to what level we can able to access. Whether this can be accessible within the class or whether this can be accessible outside of the class. If it is outside of the class, then up to what level we can access. Okay, in the entire programming we can access, or in the entire Salesforce we can access, or from the outside of the Salesforce application also can we access, or in the child classes also can we access. So that here depends upon our requirement, we are going to be specifying that associated access level with the help of access specifiers. So for that here, when coming to the Apex programming language, whatever the functionalities that we have that we are going to write, we can able to implement in terms of a class and an object, because this is purely an object-oriented programming language. So everything we have to be implement in terms of a class and an object. So we can define a number of classes and we can define a number of objects also for each class, and we can able to implement the functionality as per the customer requirement. And so when move forward to the object-oriented programming, like as Apex classes, like the classes and the objects, we will go in detail. And the second rule that we have to follow while writing the Apex programming, Apex programming is tightly coupled programming language. This is the tightly coupled programming language. So what do you mean by this tightly coupled programming language? Basically, when coming to the programming, we have tightly coupled programming language and we have loosely coupled programming language. So when coming to the loosely coupled programming language, suppose for example, we have Visual Basic. Okay, for example, Visual Basic. I hope everybody has heard about this word Visual Basic. Suppose for example, I want to perform the addition of two integer variables. Assume that here I have the two values 200 and then I have some value 500. Two integer values are there. Now this x value I'm storing into the x variable and the 500 value I'm storing into a variable called as y. So now the values are available inside a particular variables. So now I am defining these variables here in VB programming. I'm using dim x comma y as integer. So now I have defined two integer variables for using the data types. Okay, I have defined both are of type integer so that we can able to store some integer values inside that variable. So now here I'm specifying the value for this set and set y to 500. I have assigning the value. For example, I'm giving equal to symbol so that we can understand clearly. So now here I have defined two variables x and y before its usage. Okay, before its usage, I have defined two variables. And now I would like to perform the addition operation on this x plus y. Okay, x plus y. I want to store the result of this operation into a variable. So I'm defining simply result. Okay, simply I'm going to be specifying result equals to x plus y. So now in this kind of scenario, just I have defined x and y, but I haven't defined the variable result. But when coming to the loosely coupled programming, like as VB programming, no need to define the variable before its usage. Directly we can able to use the variable also. So at that time, depends upon the data type that we are going to be assigning. Nothing but depends upon the value that we are going to be assigning to that particular variable. Based on the values data type, it is going to be defining this variable by default. So now, when coming to this loosely coupled programming, no need to define the variable. We can able to use the variable directly without any definition. So now this is called as definition and this is called as assignment. This is called as assignment. So now we have defined the variable and we have assigned some values and then I'm performing some addition operation and then the result of that operation I'm storing into a variable. That variable is not yet defined. So now here result is a variable which is not defined, not yet defined. Now I'm giving a note point here. In loosely coupled programming language, we can use the variable. We can use the variable without a definition. Without definition, which is not a mandatory. But when coming to the tightly coupled programming language, in terms of the tightly coupled programming language, the mandatory rule is we have to define the variable before its usage. We have to define the variable before its usage. Then what is the need of defining this variable before its usage? If the variable is no need to define, then we can reduce one line of statement also. Then what is the advantage while defining this variable? So now, whenever if the programming language is restricting you to define a variable, then we have to specify what type of value that you are going to store inside that variable. So now you have to indicate whether you want to store an integer value, or you want to store a string value, or you want to store a double value, or do you want to store a boolean type of value, do you want to store an object, or do you want to store a record, or do you want to store some collection of records. So now depends upon the type that you have specified to define a variable, then the programming language or the compiler is going to be assigning the required amount of memory for that variable. So now, at the time of defining the variable, we are going to be specifying the data type, and then we have to specify the variable name. Okay. At the time of defining the variable, we have to specify the data type and the variable name. So now, which is going to be indicating to the compiler that the user is going to be defining a variable with this particular name, and which is of type. This is the type that we have specified. Suppose, for example, here integer some x comma, like some first number comma second number comma total comma average, like that. I'm defining one more string, some customer name, country name, etc. So now, whenever you are defining the variable and we have specified the data type and we have specified the variable name, so now whenever you are defining the variable before its usage, then you have indicated that the user is defining the variable first number, second number, total, and the average. These are the four variables has been defined by the user, which are of type integer. So depends upon the data type that you have specified, the Apex compiler is going to be assigning the required amount of memory for these variables: first number, second number, total, and the average. So nothing but here, based on the data type that you have specified, the Apex compiler is going to be assigning some required amount of memory for that variable. So now if we did not define the variable, if we did not specify any data type, then how the compiler will understand what type of data that we are going to store, and how the compiler will understand how much memory will be required to assign for this variable? So it's a very big problem for us. So when coming to the Salesforce, it's a shared infrastructure, so that we have to utilize the resources of Salesforce very efficiently. So now for that, to avoid this kind of problems, Salesforce is restricting us to define the variable before its usage. So now if we define the variable, then we can able to utilize the memory very efficiently also. So instead of allocating, or instead of wasting some resources, or instead of wasting some memory, we can able to utilize the memory very efficiently. Whenever if you want to store some very small content, then to store that small content, whatever the memory is required, we can assign only that memory. If you are storing some huge content, then for that whatever the memory is required, then we can assign some more memory here. So depends upon our requirement, we can able to assign the memory for that variables, so that we can able to keep on utilizing the memory very efficiently also. So for that, when coming to the tightly coupled programming, the advantage is we can utilize the memory very efficiently. That is, based on the data type specified by the user, the memory will be reserved or allocated. for the variables. Now, so that is the difference between tightly coupled programming and the loosely coupled programming. And when coming to the Apex programming is purely a tightly coupled programming language. And the third point, the third rule which we have to follow while writing the Apex code. The third rule is each statement in Apex programming should be end with a semicolon. Should be end with a semicolon. So now whatever the statement that we are going to write, so each and every statement should be end with a semicolon as per the Apex programming syntax rules. And next. So when coming to the Apex programming, these syntactical rules are same for C programming, C++, Java, and the .NET supported programming languages and Apex programming. So all these programming languages will be having the similar kind of rules. Like, so in C programming also we have the same statement that every C programming statement should be end with a semicolon. The same syntactical rules is also available here. Next one. So when coming to the Apex programming, we can able to build custom business logics, and we can able to perform database operations. We can able to perform the database manipulations also. So for that, Apex programming language is used to, whenever if we want to insert the records, then we are using the page layouts. And if you want to update the records, we are using the page layouts. If you want to delete the records, we are using the page layouts. If you want to view the records, then we are going to be using the page layouts. But by using this Apex programming language, we can able to perform all the DML manipulations in the object directly without using the page layout. Through our Apex programming itself, we can create the records, we can modify the records, we can delete the records, and we can update the records as well. And along with that, we can able to retrieve our records also by adding the user defined conditions. And Apex is tightly integrated with database objects. Like, so whatever the objects that you have created in our Salesforce, so with the same API name of that object, the Salesforce is going to be creating a table inside the database.com, so where the actual data will be get resides. So whenever if you want to perform some operations inside that object, like inserting some records, updating some records, deleting some records, and the viewing or retrieving some records, then we can able to use this Apex programming, so that this is purely integrated with the database objects. Apex is integrated with database programming languages such as, first one is SOQL, Salesforce Object Query Language, and which is used to retrieve the records from Salesforce objects. And the second one is It is purely integrated with SOSL, that is Salesforce Object Search Language, which is for the global search, and it is integrated with the DML statements in order to perform DML manipulations. Like insert, update, delete, undelete, upsert. So now it is purely integrated with this DML programmings. And along with that, Apex provides a set of libraries also. It provides a set of libraries to perform various operations. Like we have Apex API, second one SOAP API, third one REST API, fourth one metadata API, fifth one streaming API, sixth one charter API, seventh one bulk API, like that, etc. So nothing but it provides a set of libraries in order to perform some operations in our Salesforce applications also. So where whenever you are going to be implementing some integrations, where if the external system and your Salesforce both wants to use the HTTP services, then we can use the REST API. If the external system is supporting only the web services, then we can able to use the SOAP API. And metadata API is purely used to interact with the structure of the objects which you have created. And without writing any SOQL queries, if you want to fetch some data, then we can able to use metadata API. And by using metadata API, we can able to do the deployments of your Salesforce code to the various instances. It may be to production instance, it may be to QA instance, or it may be to other instances as well. And streaming API is purely used for the notifications. Like suppose, for example, I'm using a Skype application where for the chatting purpose we are using the Skype. So now we have added some contacts in the Skype. Okay, some of our friends Skype IDs we have added in our Skype application. So now I have logged into my Skype. So now it is going to be allowing me to do some chat with our friends. And now suddenly one of my friend has joined into the Skype, okay, through some different place by using his system. So immediately you will be getting a pop-up notification that so and so person is online. Nothing but it is giving some indication to you that this person is online just now. If one of the person has been signed out from the Skype, then it will be giving the notification this person is offline. So nothing but, so they have logged in from different place. They may be in the same country, they may be in the same place, they may be from, they may be in a different country as well, wherever they are. So whenever they are signed out or whenever they have signed in, automatically it is giving a popular notification to you, all the persons who has added in that. So now you are getting the notification. How it is getting the notification? Because of the streaming API. In our Salesforce, if you want to give this kind of notifications, then we can able to use the streaming API as well. And then Charter API. So Charter API is purely for the internal communication messenger purpose. So if you want to use the Charter API, or if you want to have some if you want to do some posting some information, or if you want to create some task, or if you want to comment something on the existing post, if you want to upload the files, everything we can able to use the charter API. This charter API is purely looking like as your Facebook application, where you can post some information, somebody can comment on that, somebody can like that, somebody can able to add some other posts also. All these things, the same implementation is available in our Salesforce with the help of charter API. And bulk API is used to perform some bulk processings. So when you go to some real industries or the real-time organizations where they're having some millions and millions of customers, at that time they are going to be performing the operations in bulk. Nothing but some huge transactions they're performing, like for example in the banking or finance or the insurance or all the life sciences domains. So they are going to be every day, so many, some thousands of customers are visiting that particular bank and they're performing their own transactions. So to perform this kind of bulk operations, they would like to use the bulk API in Salesforce, where we can able to process a huge records, a huge set of records in a single shot. That much of flexibility is available here. And then the seventh one. So whatever the code that we have written, okay, in our Apex Salesforce, so whatever the programming code that we are going to write, that should be maximum of 30 lakhs characters. Salesforce has a governor limit to write maximum of 30 lakhs characters of Apex code. 30 lakhs characters of Apex code inside an instance, inside an organization. And then what happened if the 30 lakhs characters are over? Nothing but I am going to be writing some more, because my application is very, very complex and still I want to implement some more feature for my application. So at that time, what we can do? Do we need to stop my application developing or what? So now if it is a developer edition, no option to extend the size, extend the characters limit. If it is a licensed edition, we can extend the characters limit by our Salesforce administrator. So now we can able to write maximum of 30 lakhs characters inside that Apex programming in our entire Salesforce organization, so that we cannot able to write more than 30 lakhs characters. And the next rule is, whatever the code that you want to comment, we can able to comment that code. We can comment the Apex code which is not needed to execute. So whatever the code that we have commented, the commented code cannot be compiled and the commented code cannot be executed. That is, commented code will not be compiled and will not be executed and will not be counted in Apex characters limit. Okay, then how can we comment the code here? So suppose here we have two types of comments are available. One is single line comment, and the second one is multi-line comment. What is this single line comment? Suppose here I have written some statements like I have written some statement 1, I have written some statement 2, I have written some statement 3. So at that time, if you want to comment only a single line, okay, it may be statement 1 or statement 2, then we have to use a format called as two forward slashes. Okay, two forward slashes. This means nothing but we need to comment a single line by using two forward slashes. Two forward slashes. So whatever the line that you have commented, that commented line cannot be compiled by Apex compiler. The commented line cannot be executed by the Apex compiler or Apex runtime. So it will not counted in the inside the TLAX characters of Apex governor limit. And then sometimes I have the multiple lines are available. I need to comment the multiple lines. To comment the multiple lines in Apex programming, we have to use the below format. We have to specify the format here. These are the statements. And then we have to close it. This is the syntax we have to follow. Okay, this is the syntax we have to follow. Nothing but we have to start with a forward slash and a start symbol, and then write whatever the statement that you want. It may be one, it may be multiple also, and then finally close that block by using this star and a forward slash, which is going to be indicating this is a block where I have some statements which does needs to be no need to compile, no need to execute. So which we have implemented very long back, which are not required for us. So that here I would like to make it comment so that this code cannot be compiled, this code cannot be executed. So now here, when coming to the Apex compiler, so whatever the statements that have compiled, the commented, those commented lines cannot be compiled, it cannot be executed by the Apex runtime. So that we can able to avoid the execution of these unwanted lines and the unwanted code. In future, if it is required, then we can make it uncomment also. So nothing but we would like to remove the comment so that it may be executed in future if it is required. We don't want to delete unnecessarily. Maybe in future it may be required for us. So that we would like to make it as it is, but we need to comment the code which cannot be compiled, which cannot be executed. These are some standard fundamental rules that we have to follow whenever you are going to be defining or writing some Apex programming code. And in today's evening section, we are going to be discussing about the data types. In today's evening section, we are going to be discussing about the data types, and from there we would like to have the regular sections daily so that we can able to continue our remaining Apex development sessions. Thank you.